Unlocking the Golden Cage. I'm here today with a very special guest, Francisco Ramirez, who is a sexual health expert and is going to be talking about the themes of The Golden Cage, my new musical, in terms of sexual health. So this whole series is all about unlocking the meaning of this musical. Because musicals can just come and go, or entertainment can come and go, and people can be like, oh, I like that, or I didn't like that. But the real power of anything is finding the meaning and learning how to have conversations about it and learning how it opens up our own lives. And so I wanted to invite you because you were actually at the performance, the live performance, and to find out about some of the themes that you discovered in this musical and how you see them showing up in your personal life and in your work life. So tell us just a little bit about you and then take it away.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thrilled. Hi, my name is Francisco, and I'm a sexuality educator. My background is in public health and all things sexuality education, sexual health. I also work in kind of equity and inclusion, diversity, including in kind of workspaces as well. That's a part of my work over the years. And among other things, including, creating an app that helps young people around sex, dating, relationships, and going out and to schools and different places. I go out on the streets in New York City and put a sign out that says free sex advice, and people just come up and we have conversations about whatever's kind of on their minds. And I've been doing that for about maybe over 10 years now. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. And I imagine or fear or hope or can predict that I'll probably be saying a lot more about myself, because the Golden Cage, I was just saying a moment ago that so much of it hit me in a personal way, and then I was thinking about it in a professional way, and then I was like, I'm telling the same story to myself in terms of how it impacted me. So I have so much. I'll tell you, I was you were kind enough to share the link with me in advance, and I watched it and of course cried, and then started jotting down just notes and journaling and stuff. I ended up with 3 pages, dense 10-point font, pages and pages of notes and feelings and all sorts of reactions. So I'm kind of, we'll see how much I can even get to, because there's so much.
This is great because this story has been in my mind and in my heart for decades and decades and decades, and the chance for it to now be out and for other people to be experiencing it, and then for me to get to talk to people about the themes, because they're the themes of my life, and they're put in this kind of whimsical, there's bird people who fly and they're caught in cages, but it's really about my deepest experience of life. So this is just amazing to get to talk about your experience of it and what it's kind of unlocked for you.
Yeah. So there are literally 100 entry points for me to go into, and I was realizing that I'm both a fan of the larger kind of pieces, but also the small. I kept rewatching certain seconds over and over again. And I guess, can I just start with the thing that the 1 second that I replayed probably 40 times in the last week, and that is Althea in the version I have, 55 minutes and 32 seconds in, there is a silence. And a silence, I don't know much about music, but I know the idea of a rest, and that I was watching something and somebody said a rest is a sound, silence is a sound, and it's part of the story.
Right.
And there's a moment at 55:32 where Boris has, he says, the rhythm, the music, and she goes from her Althea goes from her rocking chair, and she looks off, and I promise I will say this without crying, because otherwise I will fall apart completely. But she looks off, and she looks, in my opinion, she looks into a place that's in another dimension, and and this is so much credit to the actor as well, the performer Maddie Hall, looking off and seeing something that doesn't exist in this moment, but also exists in this moment. And then she goes into the rhythm, the music, and she's seeing, it feels like remembering, or maybe remembering for the first time somehow again, this idea that there is something other than right now. And for me, in all my work around sexual health and relationships, and people wanting to be in different places than they are, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but uh, the power of knowing that we can, and I'd love to talk about this too, find a way to invite ourselves, or be invited, or be pulled towards something that isn't here, but that is imagined, or that we can sort of conjure up, is the thing. There's 100 things that light me up about this, but I could talk about that one for literally 2 hours straight. I'll just start there.
Okay. I just also want to talk about that moment because I love that moment. This is a moment where that she has been resisting and resisting and resisting herself and her memory of herself and her memory of the freedom.
Hmm.
And in this one moment, she takes on the music, and she does allow herself to remember and hope and embody it.
Yeah, it's so special, and I've thought about it so much, and I even thought about the order, the rhythm, the music, the all that,
Yeah.
and I thought about, I went to undergrad at Berkeley, and I was thinking about, like, walking around the campus and hearing often the distance, sort of like the drum circles all through the night, and what it meant to hear sort of like rhythm and beats, and how you could be quite far away and maybe not hear music, but there was something that called about the rhythm of something. And I that's like, again, I will absolutely try to say this without crying, but because I found it so powerful, the idea that for Althea, and for perhaps all of us, or many of us, this idea that there is some life force, some beat. And I thought about heartbeats and rhythms and things
Mm.
that are almost indescribable, that don't have melody perhaps, or music, or lyrics, or the reelings and all the soaring and all of that, but just starts with the rhythm and a sort of remembrance, or a reminding of, in my space of sexual health and relationships and dating, like, what is the thing that lights you up, that has its own, pull. And each of us has our own pull around rhythm and music, I imagine. And there are probably things we have in common, but there are also things we individually love that others don't love. And so I think so much about, what is, for any viewer of this, like, what is your rhythm that, like, draws you in? What is your music? And how can you find ways to respond to that?
Wow. Yes, and you're reminding me that there's that calling too, the calling, or the memory of it calling to us, of our own rhythm calling to us. Um, I'm hearing a little bit of extraneous sound, but hopefully that's okay. I don't think it's you. I think it's
Okay.
okay. It's also really interesting because, when you write a musical, especially if it's over decades, a lot of things get written and then thrown away.
Hmm.
And you were reminding me of one of the sections that got thrown away. So Althea is in the middle of nowhere in this cage, and that when Boris shows up and sort of starts talking to her about what it's like on the outside, and one of the things that got thrown away was this song that was where she was talking about over there, like over
Hmm.
there and over there and over there. And she said, over there, I see the lights of the town. How could the night be dark with the sound of laughter in the air? With the rhythms. You just made me think of things that got thrown away out of this musical, but clearly are still there in terms of what you're experiencing.
Oh
So
yeah. It was so, in rewatching it, and I do remember being in the theater in that moment and just being like, like, absolutely just froze, and I didn't know why I was freezing, but having the luxury of being able to rewatch it now, it's just this, I'm struck by, she's in this rocking chair, like she's having this movement, she's having this moment, and she's in her amazing pajamas, right? And then yet in that moment, she's not, for me at least, she's not there when we're going to need a new verb because it's like hearing, living, remembering, imagining, whatever that those verbs are together. Man, I don't know what that would be.
Right,
But she's there. She's technically, spatially, perhaps in the golden cage, depending on how we think of it.
right.
But she's let out by whatever is coming, by possibility, by promise, by the idea that there can be something glorious to behold on the other side. And what I find doing free sex advice in the park is one of the things, a theme that I found is that so many people come up, share something super personal, or something that feels, yeah, intimate to them or special or sometimes unique. And a lot of times it comes to this question of, am I somehow bigger or larger or able to kind of eclipse the sum of pain or worry or doubt that I've experienced or that I hold? Is there something kind of larger for me? Can I ask for the thing that I want? Can I speak up? Can I admit to myself who I am, or whatever these things may be? But can I be larger than that fear or pain or negative experience, whatever it may be? And to me, that's it. What's so amazing is that she steps over that threshold, which I just love. She just go right over it. and it's, I would have thought that starting to fly would have sort of been this, like, the moment, but for me it's when she just has her own sort of moment of imagination to be able to see something on the other side, and however it comes together for her to be able to just take steps in the direction of what she, I'll say, wants or imagines or dreams or whatever it may be, or is just pulled naturally to. That's a beautiful theme that I think, to me, speaks so much to what is it that, what in the world of sexuality and relationships and desire, what is the thing that you really want for yourself? And that's at the key of so much of my work.
When you said, "Can I admit to myself who I am?" I think that's what you said, and then stepping into that that seems like such a deep and such a huge willingness that I think, I mean, I doubt I have been willing for that completely. And what you're saying about people saying how did you say it, something larger, to step into than the pain and the shame and all of that we've created our cage out of. And
Yeah.
one of the very last parts of the show that I wrote is when they talk, when she says, she figures out how the cage becomes a trap, and she says, you build your cage from dreams that died and every heartache that you've ever held inside. You forge the bars from every pain and sorrow you have known, and in your cage you are alone. And the part that got cut was the part that Boris sings after that. Many things need to be cut, in a musical. And what he says is the quest, the flight, the endless night, the taste of glory that you doubt you'll ever find. And all the time you're aching for a trust you fear you'll never know. You're torn, you're tossed, outside the cage, you're lost. And so each of them, a friend had asked me, where are they at the end of the show, or where are they in the beginning of the show? And I said, she's alone and he's lost. And these genders are just very arbitrary. And when we cast it could have been any cast. Anyway, so I don't know why that occurred to me while you were speaking. But again, just kind of going back to this human experience of being willing to admit who we are and what that means, and what that means we're going to step into, which we have no idea what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, well, how do you manage that? How do you I mean, you are dealing with people in real life situations, not, fantasy musicals. Um, w and can you talk more about that? Like, well, how can people prepare for that? How can they step into that?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things I was surprised to find, I'm gonna go back to the musical just for a moment because it seemed I felt like I learned something. I was reminded of something, and that is the actual benefit. There, like the real benefit of the cage. There's a real. I feel like it's worth acknowledging, and people can fight me online about this. There is some the cage has a function, a supportive function, depending on how we, manage it. Like she gets what it's all about at the end, and she's able to like, move the bars and all so effortlessly, having been on both sides. Um, but in the moments that, especially if life is especially traumatic or there's a lot of turmoil or when things are especially scary, it can be really nice using a word from the musical to go back to something that feels safe. And I talk with a lot of not just young people but people of all ages who feel like, I'm not making that big bold step just yet, or I'm making it in certain moments, and I feel a lot of shame over that. Or I talked to a lot of people even just earlier today who, they're saying, I should have done this X number of years ago or decades ago or whatever. But being kind to ourselves and recognizing that, um, I'll put it this way. One of the things, and I wonder if I bet, well, you've probably heard everything, but I had a moment in rewatching that I was like, are they the same am I talking to, are they the same person? Have you heard people talk about that?
Well, here's the thing. So, I don't know if you know how this show came about,
Hmm.
but I was 19 when I first started having the show, and I was sitting at a piano and I was asked myself, "What is my life gonna be, a life of freedom or security? Am I gonna search for freedom or security?" And suddenly I saw these two characters on either side of bars. And it was both me, but they were speaking to each other. Here I am in my golden cage, so secure and so pure. There you are on the outside looking in. And so I initially just called them A and B, you know, option A, option B. And then I gave them the names of Alpha and Beta. And then I gave them the names of Althea and Boris. So, yes. I mean, yes and no. I mean, that's a big question I have. Are they the same people or are they two different people? Is it that we need to have the theme that I fought my whole life was she must be able to get out of there herself. She can't need him, and then it took me many decades to accept,
Hmm.
no, there do need. We can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be separate people.
Yeah.
So yes, they're the same, and no, they're not.
Yeah. That's funny. I thought about the A and the B, and I had the similar conversation, and really feeling like I was thinking about coming out and gender identity and sexual orientation a lot when I was thinking about the musical. And I also, it's funny, yeah, I had that feeling also of, like, Boris, but Althea can find a way out on her own. She can do this. She's got this. Um, and so I had I got some flavor of resistance to thinking that she needed someone else. I was thinking about Wizard of Oz and was she wearing the shoes the whole time kind of situation. And uh, when I thought about kind of all the role models or people who had come before me, exchanges that I've had with strangers and drag queens and the Oprah Winfrey Show and my parents and coworkers and artists and even the art, the Golden Cage itself, all these instructive or teachers and enlighteners, and how I can't have done so many, like, it's impossible for me to have done so many things, including coming out or including taking all these kinds of risks as I do, artistically or professionally. And yet so much of it is coming, from that rocking chair pajama sort of moment of like, I think I might be this person, or, this is the sort of truth that keeps bubbling up for me with the ricochets of others, even if they're almost, I'm not friends with Oprah Winfrey, but the show was, really im- important for me sort of growing up. And that was sort of one of like a, really important touchstone for me to feel like, that I make me realize that I wanted to do the work that I do.
Wow. So it kind of gave you a potential of freedom, in a sense, or some kind of. And I'm wondering, and I'm going back to that line that you loved when she is able to sing that song, the rhythm, the music, and I'm thinking I just sensed when you were talking about Oprah Winfrey that was kind of, it was the same scent on the air.
Yeah.
Am I hearing
Yeah.
that right?
Absolutely, right? That it feels like there's a kind of a peppering or a seasoning of like possibility of another way to think or another way to see. And I can even say it in a different way. I know that um, with our app, okay, so, and with the work that I do in the park, uh, the sign technically says free sex advice. And for years, I've been saying that I really should rename it because it's not about advice. It's not me telling someone what to do, someone what to do. It's not Boris saying, okay, Alfie, we're gonna like pull you out of the
Yes.
cage of your spot. It was, the asking questions or giving glimpses or reflections, or even, I can even see Boris kind of, just being close, like sitting with someone or being with someone in their kind of moment, that allows us to kind of reflect and notice what is it that we really want, and that can end up being the most freeing and the most helpful action, just being with someone as opposed to instructing someone along.
Like being with someone and hearing them and letting them know that they're being heard.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things you talked about dating, and I'm dating ineffectively. I'm, trying now. And I think about the golden cage, and I think about, so in the story, this golden cage is mythical, it's legendary, and from the bird people. And I've asked myself, why? Why are they talking about it? Is it and then I've asked myself, well, what do they actually find there? Let's say it's not just a, you know some pie in the sky thing, but if there's actually some reason why it's mythical and a place people would want to go, what do they find there? And what they find is each other. They find another wounded, misguided, lonely, doing everything wrong person, or whatever creature they are. And I've just and because they're caught in both their ambition and their, you know rigid security, they are able to find each other in that. And I'm just curious if you see any themes in that about human connection.
Yeah, there's so much with dating, I saw so many different themes around like what the cage represents. And um I'm just now seeing it for the first time since you said that about I have to try this one on, but maybe something about hmm, like what if the golden I'm making a joke, but like what if the golden cage is like a bar or like a place that we convene? What if we can all sort of show up at the, like the Lonely Souls bar essentially, or it doesn't have to be a bar, but whatever, the watering hole, whatever it may
Right.
be, and sort of lay some things bare, and like have like meaningful, authentic exchange. I think, a lot of dating ends up being sort of showing up and being like, "Hey, I'm kind of together. Are you?
Oh.
Okay, here we are. What about you? Okay, yeah. Well, let's be two together people. But like,
Right.
also, I'm broken as heck. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I'm always like trying to rebuild, and then I'm breaking again. I'm rebuilding, and something about the way I hadn't even thought of this, but something about the way you just described it made me wonder about that value of kind of showing up in their because they're having really really authentic moments through, they're having a whole range of experiences, but there's like a kind of painful but also insightful kind of authenticity that goes throughout. uh, that's there's that, And I also thought I couldn't help but thinking about there's some part of the musical where it's just they're gushing about the cage, and they're like, especially Boris, it's
Oh,
like,
right.
I can't remember what they're just it's kind of like the cage will solve all the problems. The cage is everything. The cage is gonna just like the cage is it. And I was thinking about how work with so many people who relationships on their own seem to be the thing that is romanticized. You know, the
Oh,
Instagram, version of relationships, or even just the promise of relationships. I thought about that whole piece that Boris keeps going back to, like, the things you learn as a child. I actually maybe they both reference the things they learned as a
they
child. Like,
do. They
yeah,
did. And I'll talk about that in a second. I just want thank you for the people who are chatting with us. It's so great to see that you're here. And I want to say that this musical, so Alfredo just said, I haven't seen the musical. I hope it can be here. The musical is going to be released as a film in December. And we're having conversations to kind of unpack it and unlock the themes, because those themes are all around us, even if whether you've seen the musical or not. And then you'll be able to see the musical once it actually comes out. But I just wanted to see what it was like to start talking about the themes before people see the musical. So that's what's going on. And thank you for, what you're writing. And I'm so happy that you're here. Francisco, there was something you just said. Oh, and I wanted to go back to it about okay, I forgot.
the
And
watering hole, or the
oh,
the learn as a child.
oh, I know what it was. I had never thought about this before, but it was the fact that once you're ready, once you're ready, you're ready. Like,
Mm,
why? I kept asking myself recently, why this day? What happened this day? Has been searching for this golden cage his whole life. Althea has been in this cage as long as she can remember. What happens on this day?
mm,
On this day, he gets lost again. She wakes up again, but something happens. A part of him, this little feather, actually ends up kind of falling into her cage, and maybe they would have connected anyway, but a part of him ends up in front of her, which makes her start dreaming. And
mm,
my sense is, and but when they first meet, like we often do, they're completely, they start with a fight. It all starts like that. Get out of here! You don't belong here. But a hope that I'm getting from this, as we speak about it in terms of dating, is that at the moment when we are finally ready, for no reason we know of, that it is inevitable that the connection will happen. This is what maybe I'm just hoping this, because what does happen is that they both become free in a way they never, ever, ever could have alone,
mm, mm, mm,
but not in a straight line in any way.
mm, mm. Right, she couldn't have. I'd like to think she could have done it, but she was hanging out at home.
Right.
She was
Yeah.
installed there.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know the story, which is like everybody, it's about a golden cage, and inside the cage is this grumpy, disgruntled diva who's been there forever. And outside the cage is this bird person who's been searching for the cage his whole life. When he finally stumbles on it, the cage is gorgeous to him, just perfect. But to her, inside the cage, it's made out of cement and iron. And so the story is about those two perceptions, and how, what the cage is really about. And anyway, so that's, and we're just talking about the themes of it.
And you
And
have to go see it. When
right,
it's out
right,
in
when it
December, it's
when
a
it comes
must. It's a
out.
must. I can't wait
Yeah,
to
I
share it
mean,
with
I don't
everyone.
know if this is a good idea, like talking about something that nobody can actually see, but I like it. I think it's fun to be talking about it. So that those anyway. So let's go back to that. So you were talking. You've seen the themes in terms of dating, in terms of there being a place where
Mm,
people have an experience together, right? That
yeah.
Okay. And so and talk about, I'm really curious, sexual health and this story. Because this is your field, sexual
Yeah.
health, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And where do you see that in the story?
You know, in a lot of places, and I feel like the first the one place unexpectedly that I see it having an interesting link is a lot of times when people come to me and when we're having conversations, we're discussing the problem, whatever the problem may be, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's often how my field in public health is, kind of organized. So we're talking about avoiding unintended, consequences, or lessening the severity of whatever it may be, STIs, or uh, you know, unintended outcomes, negative outcomes of bullying, all these sorts of things. Um, and there's often a push, and it only can go so far, to uh, look instead about wellness in general, and sexual wellness and sexual health as the presence of being sexually great, or at ease, or comforting, or really sort of naturally taken care of and feeling good, opposed to the absence of disease. And this is something that with the World Health Organization, we've had language around this for decades, and yet it seems that we always go back to, just avoiding bad outcomes, bad in quotes, or not in quotes. And okay, now this is a stretch, Deborah.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
The thing, going back to the rhythm and the music,
Hmm.
I was impressed by Boris coming out on the stage at the very beginning, and he starts with the rhythm, the
Hmm.
music,
Hmm.
and I can see his eyes. He is like glossed over with just like a peaceful, kind of floating, warm energy. And even, what is that? Something to the sky. And I even notice how he slightly goes up, I think, towards the end of that, that word
Yeah,
there, sort of like, what is that word? Is it
the
air,
feel,
sky?
so the rhythm, the music, the rapture as you're reeling, the feeling as you sail into the sky, that moment of freedom, the pounding in your head when first you spread your wings and start to fly.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, you can just, I mean, even just hearing you say the lyrics themselves, and then seeing the music, or seeing the performance and hearing the music with it, you can sort of just appreciate the aliveness of that moment. And that's juxtaposed a moment later where he's like looking for the thing, he's like, where's
Right.
the cage? And it's like
Oh my
this
God.
wonderful thing might have been there, like his floating and flying and rhythm and like all
Yeah.
that is there present alongside this quest. And so this is hard for me sometimes to speak about with people that I'm working with, because we're like, no, but like I got dumped, or like, no, like this person was lying to me for, and there's nothing to sort of, I'm not trying to lessen ever that pain or that quest or that whatever it is, where I've been on 3 dates and they're all going poorly, whatever it may be. And at the same time that you are sort of like living your life and breathing and floating and flying and flapping your wings and all of that, where is there joy or peace or equanimity or friendship or all these other things that kind of come along with that air under your wings, that we almost perhaps even maybe take for granted, or just feels like it's, air that we're breathing?
That is such a good question. I mean, it's not a good question, but it's such a beautiful dichotomy or paradox that this guy can fly and yet he's searching for a golden cage. So I want to talk about that, but I want to also tell people are asking about the show, and I just want to tell everybody you can go to goldencagemusical.com, get on the first to know list, and then there will be some secret. You can actually get into a secret room where you can hear just a little bit of the musical. So just go there at goldencagemusical.com. I should have put that link here, and make sure you sign up for the first to know list, and then you will get sneak peeks. So in the beginning of the show that Francisco's talking about, Boris, the bird person, comes onto stage and he's flying and he's talking about how amazing it is to fly, how beautiful it is. But then in the next breath is like, but where is this thing I've been searching for? And I think this is what I heard about what you were saying in terms of sexual health and dating and everything. We have all this freedom. We are this. We have this incredible ability to be and to be who we are and do what we do. And yet we're always searching for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing that is going to trap us, by the way, it also may set us free in ways we're not even aware of. But I had, and people had asked me about that. Like, why is a bird looking for a cage? You know, like, how come that happened? And why should he come in and talk about how beautiful it is to fly? And then in the next minute, talk about how what he really wants is this cage. So I think you know the answer to that. Why would people experience who they are, this amazing, beautiful self that they are, and in the same breath, they want something to contain them?
Mm. You know, going back to that piece about all the things I've learned as a child, one of the things that I do in a lot of the talks and workshop speeches that I give, at the beginning, somewhere in the first, 5 or 10 minutes, I have people, if we feel comfortable enough, to turn to their neighbor, whoever it may be, and I put up on the screen, I say, talk about the first message that you ever learned as a young person or a child about sex. What's the first thing you learned? And then the chat,
I remember.
and you can probably imagine what comes back, danger, watch out, you better not, it's only for, if you do, not on my watch, not under my roof, it means you're this, it means you're that, only in this way, never in that way. So much of it sort of like piles on, and the weight of that message, what my sort of mini thesis is, that the weight of those messages goes totally unchecked, totally unresolved. Or rather, we resolve it by just inheriting it and like wearing it as our own sort of, cages that from the inside, like not a. Sometimes we romanticize them, truthfully, depending on, we sort of hold that as our sort of like core belief and value, even if later on we examine and see that it maybe doesn't work for us. But we whether we like it or not, we hold on to those a lot. So I think about, I'd love to see like the prequel to the Golden Cage, see what Boris was actually, hearing. And also I want to know more about his, his flight and his joys that maybe we're coming along with his journey, and quest.
Well, it's interesting because you're saying we glorify, we might glorify this cage, and in fact, he does. It is he absolutely glorifies it, oh God! So as the show was developing, and as I was writing the show, many times I was asking myself, what's their relationship to each other? Are they the same person? Is she his mother?
Mm.
Did she leave and go off, and did he finally find her? And so if there's always part scenes that get thrown out. And there was one scene where Boris is talking about where he came up with this idea of the golden cage, that some stranger came to their nest and talked about it and was never seen again. And, so I was like, is Althea that stranger that was never seen again? I don't know, that those were the thoughts that I was having when you were talking about, our childhood experiences and how they then can become what we get locked in or locked out of in our own minds. And it's funny because my first experience was when I was 8 and I was asking my parents, what does fuck mean? Anyway, I don't know if I can say this. What does that mean? What does that word mean? And my parents were like, well, as a matter of fact, it means when people have sexual intercourse. And I was like, well, what is that? And my mother's like, well, that's when the man's penis goes into the woman's vagina. And I'm like, I'm visualizing it. And I'm like, but how? Like, how does it get in there? Like, I've seen penises. They're not going anywhere. How does it do it? And she says, something magic happens. And so I come away thinking, I don't get it. This is something I don't get. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, and I never really thought about how I haven't unraveled that, or that's still kind of in the cage. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. You know what's the one beautiful thing about the experience of kind of the last third of it, and I've said this maybe to some degree, but that it makes me wonder, because I talk about not that issue, but similar issues with my therapist all the time. And I think somewhere in my head, I feel like I have to have this S solved before I can take action. Right? Like, I mean, okay, full disclosure, right? So I'm thinking about like, yeah, maybe I should go dating. And I was even, because I'm not really a dater generally, but I've been like walking around the idea of like dating. And I was telling my therapist the other day, I was like, February 1st, 2023, I'm going to start dating.
But not
She left.
till then.
Not till then. She's kind of like, why? And I'm like, well, we've got a clean house, right? But if I listen to, I wonder when you talk about the unraveling, I just see Alfia, and yes, there's some kind of unraveling that's happening. And then yet somehow in all of it, things still feel kind of imperfect in that moment. It's like seconds before when she's like, no, I mean, I love when she's like, no, I can't imagine. Like,
Right.
no, I can't imagine. I cannot see anything beyond this. Right. And there's
Right.
like, I can't imagine ... I can't imagine that this could be the way. I can't imagine a world where, but also I hear it as I can't imagine, period.
Mm, mm,
And she goes from I can't imagine, and it feels so human to me. She goes from I can't imagine to something almost out of nowhere clicks, and she sees this thing somewhere else. That moment that I keep talking about, that so like haunts me and sticks with me really in a powerful way. And so I wonder, do I have to be unraveled, or whatever the word is, raveled in the right
mm.
direction,
Right.
re-raveled, or whatever it
Right.
is, to actually say, you know what, I'm just going to go in this direction? Can I be super imperfectly, can I not know actually where I'm headed in dating, in whatever it may be, in looking for the next relationship or whatever it is, or my sexual orientation or gender identity, whatever it may
Mhm.
be. And I hear this a lot when I'm talking with especially young people, but even older adults around, gender identity and sexual orientation, when they're looking at sort of new, like, oh, am I maybe actually, you know, uh, lesbian or bisexual or queer or whatever it may
Right.
be. Is it possible to just kind of take some steps and maybe start kind of flying without knowing kind of where everything is headed next? And then there's something just beautiful that I see in the way that Alfia just was like, well, here I go, without naming it.
Well, it's really interesting because you're talking about what am I? What kind of thing am I? And she doesn't know what kind of thing she is. And she keeps trying different hats on and different clothes on, and maybe I'm a diva, maybe I don't know, she just keeps putting different things on. And then what happens when it's the moment that she takes the leap, which is in fact when she gets pushed, then what happens is she still doesn't know who she is. And all the way down, she doesn't know who she is. And it's not until the moment of complete surrender. And this is probably my favorite moment in the whole show, is that she says, I saw the ground. I saw it race. The ground was galloping like stallions at my face. I was a fool. How could I leap? How could I ever have believed? How could I leave it all behind? And it's gone, gone, gone. And so I opened up my arms to embrace the end of everything. I hung above the earth. I hung above the earth. Instead of ground, I felt the air, the lift of wind. The wind was everywhere, and I was lifted to the sky. For years, I wondered, how does this creature suddenly have wings? How does she suddenly have wings? And then I understood when I wrote that part that she has wings because she's always had wings. And she just didn't unfurl them, and she did not surrender to who she was, and she thought she had to be something different. And in that one moment of having to let go was the moment that she actually allowed herself to be who she was. And then she remembered everything, how she too had gone and searched for that cage, she too had gotten stuck in it, all of that. And then she knew they were the same. And then she knew, then she could come and save him.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
And
The
I'm thinking there must be a parallel in just our
the wings part. I was wondering that myself.
oh, I lost my guest. Okay, I lost my guest. I think he's going to be back. I hope he will be back soon. And I don't know how that happened. That's never happened before. Here he is. Yay. Hello. And now you're on the other side of the cage bars.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, right. So we were just saying that yes, you were wondering also how come this person could fly? How come that could happen?
Yeah, I was wondering, and I had a moment where, it was like, were the wings clipped? Where did they go?
Right,
Uh,
right.
what happened? And in my, you know, I thought, okay, well, maybe we are all born with wings,
Yes, yes.
I have to say, by the I here's a total transparent moment that I remember when I met you on Focus Mate. I'm here in New York, and we just chatted for a second, and you mentioned, the golden cage, and I knew nothing about it. I just met you for the first time, and you said something about a bird person in the cage, and I was like, oh, this sounds very interesting. Yeah. I haven't been to the theater since COVID, but like, let's do this. This sounds awesome. And the whole time, and then on the way to the theater, I'm like, wait, what's a bird person? and 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 I think actually, and I think I will link this to what you say, but it's also really, I was impressed by my reaction to it. I remember starting to watch it in the theater and thinking, okay, so is this a bird or is this a person? Something my mind wanted to categorize, like, without even recognizing, like, I needed to know. I was like, well, they're flying, but like, there's like, we're suggesting a bird by, the headpiece, like, but no, it's, I wasn't sure who I was looking at. It was like, is
Well,
it Minotaur? Yeah.
it's really interesting because I always just called them bird people, but then when I started working with the costume designer and they were making birds, and I was like, he's not a bird, he's a person, he's a bird person, he's. And then finally, I went to look on the web, like, can I find a picture of one, and I found, and I was like, well, it's kind of like an angel, but it's not an angel. It's kind of like a
Mhm.
fairy, but it's big. It's like a blue collar fairy, you know, in a sense, who doesn't do fairy things. I
I
don't know
love
why.
it. I love it fantastically. It's everything I need it to be, costume wise and concept wise. And go back to the wings. That's that. Then when I really started to wonder, like, are the wings clipped? Are we all, not to get too existential, but I was like, are we all bird persons? What is a person? What is a person supposed to do, look like, purchase? How are we supposed to interact with each other? We've been fed certain, ideas of what, how humanity is supposed to operate, how I'm supposed to, interact with people, what I'm supposed to be motivated by, and producing things, contributing to society, maybe starting a family, all these sorts of things. But what if I'm just supposed to fly? What if that's all it is? And so if I'm born with wings and they're somehow clipped or missing or just who knows, because for me it was just like I couldn't figure out what happened to her wings, and at some point I just gave up sort of being curious, in a for me in a good way, because I'm
Right.
like, she's just doing the thing that she needs to do, which is getting her feet out into this space and then pushed, or emerging there and then showing up as she does at the end. To me, that part of the journey, and again, it speaks so much to people's journey around their sense of self, and you know coming to terms with or recognizing or appreciating, enjoying who they are sexually, whether that's what turns them on, or what they're how they identify with their gender identity, for example, or just the vision or dream that they have for themselves, that may feel for so many of us outside of a box. That's what I was impressed by with this, her, the wings and the bird and the person. I got finally get out of the categorizing and naming and just saying, who gives a hoot at the end? Like, she and then thankfully they're both just there flying at the end. That's
Right.
beautiful.
Wow. Well, this has opened up so much for me. I feel like we could talk for like 5 hours about this. And I feel like I'm also feeling bad that people can't actually go and see the show right now. However, if you do join the mailing list, there are some replays that I can send you to that I did before we even did the New York show, where I was talking about the themes and telling the story of it, so that at least you can tell what the story is. I mean, it's different when you're actually watching it. So, I mean, wow, I feel like we've opened up so much, and yet we've just like only, started this, touching the surface of it. And I really love this whole theme of what is hidden in us that truly is us that we don't even know about. And
Mm.
what will it take for that to come out? I mean, I feel like that's another question. And I want to also thank everybody who's been here and has been making comments, and I hope that you'll share this and also go to Francisco's site, and hopefully it's in the link. If it's not in the link, it's on the Golden Cage page. Is there any kind of last thing you want to say? I mean, I would just go on for ever, but I know we can have another conversation as these things percolate.
I have so many things still in my head. I just have to give immense gratitude to you for your art. And the music alone. Oh my gosh, the sounds in my ears from this work of art. It's a masterpiece. I could really say 100 more things. I have pages still of notes,
Oh,
but
I will wanna hear
uh,
all those, and we'll wanna hear
yeah.
all of them.
Oh yeah, I was writing about the Kardashians and all sorts of. I went off, had all sorts of ideas,
So let me
but
just let me just
yeah.
let me ask you something about that, because one of the things I want to be doing as part of unlocking the Golden Cage as we lead up to its release and after its release is to create a journaling project. And so, I mean, I'd love to talk to you more about what you actually journaled, but for people who are just kind of hearing this, what were some of the things that you journaled about that you think might be helpful or just opening?
Oh yeah, I mean the thing that I talk about with when I saw it personally, I was struck by this idea of fate. And fate shows up as it's like named, and like you can just feel the way that things are just etched in stone, and Althea just keeps going to sort of fate, and even the way that Boris is holding on to these things that Boris knows to be true. I think a lot about the word jinxing, and so like something is supposed to be, you don't want to jinx something, you don't want to like kind of mess with the way that things are supposed to be. So fate shows up a lot in my journal notes here. Imagining and what actually it means to imagine. um uh Bird, I wrote, have here my notes, birds is to flying as humans are to living. And
Mm.
uh I have so many ideas.
Wow, this is really beautiful. These are great. So I'm just going to say for people who are watching this and who haven't seen the show and who want to engage, these three things alone, where are you seeing fate show up in your life or the way you think things are? And this is a huge theme in the show, the way you think things are, the way you see them. What does imagination open up? Because you're right, that is the key that opens her mind, is imagination. And I love this. Bird is to flying as human is to, and just leave that open. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, I feel like just in those three things, though, I almost feel like if you had given me those three prompts as a kid, I would have come up with this show.
Mm.
How do I think things are? How do other people think? What do I think is real? What do I think is fate and fated? What does imagination offer? What does it create? And bird is to flying as human is to.
I love it.
Yeah. Yes, it's really beautiful. Wow. Okay. Thank you so, so much. And thank you, everyone who's watched this. And definitely go to Francisco's website. You will love it. I love your website. I love the pictures on it. I just love seeing you in action. And I hope that we will have another conversation, many conversations about this and other things. And I'm going to say farewell. Is there any last thing you would like to say?
Just love and appreciation to everyone who watches this and who finds a way to imagine for themselves.
That's beautiful. All right. Okay. Bye, everyone.